Good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Kara Solomon. I'm a conservation coordinator for the North Carolina Wildlife Federation. We're a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to protecting, conserving, and restoring wildlife and habitat in North Carolina. Tonight, I'm here with one of our community wildlife chapters, the South Wake Conservationists. We are coming to you live from Bass Lake Park in Holly Springs, North Carolina, but we also have some folks joining us online. I will be your moderator for this evening. So for those of you in the room, we'll save questions till the end. If you'll raise your hand, we'll come around with the microphone so the folks online can hear you. If you are online, you can type your question into the chat at any point. You can type it in the chat or the Q&A feature, and I'll get those read at the end. So we'll try to make sure that we have all of our questions answered by 8:30. All right. So with that, I'll go ahead and kick things off and pass things over to President of the Southway Conservationists, Monty Murray.
Thank you, Kara. Good evening, everybody. We are the Southway Conservationists. Some of you are new to us today, and I'm very pleased to have you here. Some of our members are here in Holly Springs at the Bass Lake Park Conference Room. We have a nice Christmas tree in the back, and I think the cold weather outside the season has begun. We are an all-volunteer organization. We're part of the North Carolina Wildlife Federation serving the Raleigh area. And our mission is to conserve and improve life, habitat, and diversity through conservation projects and community outreach. So check out the different ways that you can get involved on the back table. If those of you here in the room, over there, I think I've shown this to some of you, but if you haven't seen it yet, we have a variety of things we do. There is an interest survey. I'd encourage you to point your phone at the QR code. Let us know what you're interested in, and we'd like to hook up with you. Also, we have some fashionable t-shirts in the back. If you haven't got one, this is your chance. This is a sweatshirt, but we have t-shirts that look just like this. So, all right, probably look better on you. Here are some upcoming activities that we've got going. Please subscribe to our website. The website is southwakeconservationists.org. And if you subscribe, you'll get notices time we've got another activity scheduled. And if there's one that you're interested in, all you got to do is click on it and subscribe and sign up for it. Some of the things coming up, we're going to do a bamboo removal at Hemlock Bluffs Park. We're going to do some seed cleaning at the North Carolina Botanical Garden, Chapel Hill. We're going to do some invasives removal, which is kind of a regular thing we do, at Johnson Environmental Education Park, which is in Fuquay-Varina. Plus, possibly planting a new meadow there as well. We're kind of excited about that. That's a potential project. And that whole activity that we're doing at that park in collaboration with Wake Audubon. So we're really good partners with them, and we enjoy working with them. We're also going to be building a native sedge garden in Yates Mill Pond Park. And we have a lot of bird houses and at least one owl house that's ready to be installed. So that's another thing that we're going to be doing. So any of that catches your interest, watch what's going on the website on our calendar and sign up. There is some breaking news here in Wake County. The county maintenance workers lifted a manhole cover and discovered a large colony of bats living in an underground stormwater system. The North Carolina Wildlife, yeah, there's applause in the audience here locally. North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission estimates that there are about 1,000 bats in that underwater or underground system, stormwater system. It's the largest roost in the area. So this is an indication that they're losing habitat. There's a lot of development going on in Wake County. They're losing their habitat just like all the rest of the wildlife is. This is so driving them to finding new habitat. This stormwater system looked like a good choice. So if there's 1,000 bats down there, which are good for the environment, by the way, they also control insects, which people like. Tonight, we will hear about the impacts of climate change and the biodiversity crisis on children's well-being and how we can support them. Our speaker is the owner and lead teacher of Dragonfly Nature Programs in Holly Springs. She has a BS from UC Santa Barbara and a master's from UNC Chapel Hill. She's a science teacher and a certified environmental educator who designs and teaches nature studies to young people. She was interviewed about encouraging kids to get outside on ABC 23 in California in 2023. She also serves as an NC Climate Ambassador through the Path to Positive Communities program of Eco America, advocating for local climate policy and education. As a fun fact, she is also a certified holistic yoga flow instructor. You didn't know I was going to throw that in there. Please welcome Rachel Woods.
Thank you. That was a deep dive into a lot of my credentials. Thank you, Monty. I'm Rachel Woods. Thank you for having me tonight. Thank you, everybody who's joining us online. The topic of the conversation tonight is not their burden, rebalancing responsibility and wonder. And I'm going to try to balance holding a microphone and my notes at the same time. So we'll see how that works. Monty introduced me pretty well. Maybe I could skip all this. I will say, if anyone has any questions about the Certified Environmental Educator Program, it's a wonderful professional group, very inspiring, and it's full of amazing educators, formally and informally, and it's just a bolster to my professionalism, but also just the work I do. The North Carolina Climate Ambassador Program is actually through Eco America. Eco America runs this program nationally, and there's even people outside the country who join. There are 3 ways to get involved if you're interested. It's an all-volunteer community. I am part of the Path to Positive community, which is designed for community members and leaders. There's a Climate for Health community, and it's designed to train healthcare workers as a climate ambassador. And then there's the faith-based community, so people who get involved with their churches, either as church members or leaders. And the idea is that we're trained to talk casually and formally about climate change, just to make sure that good news and accurate news is getting out and actions are being taken. Tonight, our time together, I would like to present an educational model to consider in how I'm personally working to support children. It's an educational model, not the model. There's a lot of people doing a lot of good work, and this is just how I'm doing it. I also want to share news from the 2023 report put out by Eco America. It's called Mental Health in Our Changing Climate, Children and Youth. I want to share with you moments that shine, both personally and professionally, that again bolsters my spirit and my work, and will give you some insight into what it's like to work with 4-year-olds and all the fun things I get to do. And I want to leave you with some actionable items maybe you'll take with you and take into your own life. This conversation is not supposed to be for teachers. Of course, this will resonate with teachers, but anybody can take this information and use it in their own personal life. So if you're feeling a little like, am I in the right place? You're in the right place. Before we begin, I thought we could just reflect just quietly to ourselves, kind of think of what brought you here today and what you hope to walk away with. Give you a chance to think about it. I'm also wondering if you personally have any supports in your life to cope with the enormity of climate change and the rapid biodiversity loss that we're all living through right now. Maybe you don't have any supports, and maybe that's the problem. Maybe you don't need a support, and that's okay too. And then I thought, as I go through these slides, maybe there's a special child in your life or lots of children in your life that you want to keep in mind as we progress through these slides about mental health. So oftentimes, as a climate ambassador, I speak to rooms full of people who don't really know anything about the climate. And so I like to start off with a where we are slide. And I changed it for us today. I think I'm speaking tonight to a different group of people who maybe are a little bit in the know, but still it's good to start from some statements of fact. Statement of fact, the role of humans in our environmental crisis is indisputable, which means that we also have some control over it. So we can look at that as a negative or a positive, and it's probably both, right? North Carolina has lost more than 2.5 million acres of natural area and farmland since the 1980s. And if you've been here long enough, it feels pretty miserable to watch, for me at least anyway. I haven't been here since the 1980s. I moved here in 2000, but 25 years of watching them cut down forests has taken its toll on me personally. In 2024, there were 27 weather or climate related disasters in the United States that exceeded $1 billion in damage. That's 27, and that's not globally, that's just the United States. That also is not taking into account all the weather related disasters that didn't cost that much money. And when I say the financial costs were over $1 billion, let's check out Hurricane Helene here that hit North Carolina, Western Carolina in 2024. It has cost the state $53 billion in damage. So when we say exceeding $1 billion, we really mean exceeding $1 billion. There are 248 species of animals listed under a protective status in the state of North Carolina. It doesn't count the plants and the fungi. These are just the animals. And the fact of the matter is, environmental crises harms some more than it does others due to systems of racism and injustice. Something I want you to keep in mind as we progress through our slides. Here's another statement of fact and a moment that shines in my life. I every day bring things for kids to see and touch. And one of those things that they see and touch is snakeskin. And the most common response I get is, oh my gosh, it feels like plastic, which breaks my heart every time I hear it. But I hear it all the time. And one time I was in a classroom and I said aloud to the teachers more than anybody, I would like to live in a world where a child touches plastic and says, man, it feels just like snakeskin. Goodness gracious. But the reality is, children are not exposed to natural textures and fibers and natural things very early in life before they touch plastic. They touch plastic first, and so that is what they know. And so this is the world I live in and the world I'm trying to rebalance a little. So, one educational model. I own Dragonfly Nature Programs. Dragonfly Nature Programs has been designing nature studies for young people in the Triangle area for almost 20 years now. I purchased the company in 2015. Prior to that, I was a high school science teacher in Wake County Public Schools. We are a for-profit company. That is a common misconception. A lot of the groups that do work like I do are actually nonprofits. I do not have a site. I go into schools. So I bring everything with me and I run all my programs school to school. So every day I'm running from one school to the next, one classroom to the next, and I have my buckets. I've had parents tell me that their kids play Miss Rachel and they have their I thought I lost my mic. They have their buckets and they pull things out and they teach their siblings just like Miss Rachel does. So that's sweet. We do in-school programming. Most of my clients are preschools or early education centers. We do teach all the way up to age 12 or about grade 5. We provide K through 5 programming for public and private schools as well. And we match the North Carolina Standard Course of Study in Science to nature in ways that sometimes teachers didn't think I could do, but I do it because I want to make it relevant to the children. We also have an after-school program called Citizen Naturalists, and I go on to school campuses and we explore their school surroundings and whatever they have. And some schools have a field, and some schools have acres of woods and wetlands. And so I get to get creative and make sure everyone's experiencing nature all around them. And as far as adults, we do have some blogs. I do have free lessons on my website, and I am trying to get more involved in getting parents involved. And the latest example of that is I partnered with an absolutely fantastic group, the Great Raleigh Cleanup, and we had a family nature program / litter cleanup in Raleigh. And so I got to talk to adults, I got to talk to kids, and I get to kind of branch out on who I get to talk to. So when I'm designing these programs, I have some guideposts that I keep in mind. Ecophilia first. If I can teach a child to love something, it's possible they'll grow up to protect it. I hope. I'm pretty sure they will. But kids don't want to be told about all the box turtles that are dying due to all the cars on the road, but they love it when I bring in my box turtle rehab with the NC State Turtle Rescue team. And they love to hear how the turtles are progressing. And today we got to give a turtle a bath, and they just thought that was the most amazing thing they'd ever seen. I only teach about native flora and fauna here in North Carolina. No offense to the penguins and the rainforests. They absolutely deserve all the attention. However, when we can keep it local and when I can keep it seasonal, then it's meaningful. And when I leave the room, the kids go outside and they see exactly what I'm talking about. So I'm not going to have a snake program in December, and I'm not going to teach evergreens in July. I switch it up and make sure that it's something that they can directly connect to. It is my intention that I meet every child where they're at. I like to think that's my intention when I meet adults too. But when I walk into a room, some children are ready to learn and some children need to participate, want to participate, and have limited abilities to do so. And we try to include all children in whatever we do. But this also means meeting them where they're at with their personal worldview when it comes to nature. For example, just a couple weeks ago, and I'm not quite sure what this happened because we weren't talking about snakes. And I was just walking into the classroom, and a 4-year-old stopped me, and he told me the age-old story of his dad, the snake, and the business end of a shovel. And in that moment, I don't know why I had this reaction, but I said, oh my, well, I know why I had this reaction. I said, oh my goodness, that poor snake. And the look on his face was priceless because I'm told this story all the time. But he looked at me like, you know what? I never thought of it that way. Like he was like, yeah, that poor snake. What did he ever do? So I met the child where he was at. I didn't denigrate his father. I didn't blow his whole epic hero story they had going on for his dad. But maybe next time we can just leave the snake alone. I also try the best I can to allow the kids to be the thing, especially the younger the child. This is their moment of pure curiosity, empathy for everything. I mean, they're just so excited to learn. So if they can be the trees in the wind, if they can mimic the call of the chickadee, if they can pick up little rubber bands and pretend they're little worms and feed the baby birds, it just connects them in a way that we kind of lose as they age. As they kind of harden up and put on their protective coats, they're just less open to that. So if I can get in right when their hearts are just so wide open, their minds are so wide open, they just feel it on another level. And the last thing I really try to do as an organization is make sure that what I'm doing is always in line with what I'm saying. So when I'm showing up to Earth Day festivals, I'm not handing out plastic giveaways because that's not helpful to the earth. And when I bring in materials, I am trying to purchase things that will last and I can wash them and I reuse them. And I say, no, let's put them back. I'm going to wash them. We're going to reuse them again. And maybe the teachers are seeing this and saying, oh, I can do that with my supplies. And maybe the kids are seeing it. But I always try to make sure that my actions are matching my words. Here's an example of my work in action. I ran a summer camp this summer called Feathered Friends. This particular week was reserved for 3 to 5-year-olds. And this was my Facebook post on July 29th, 2025. If you're wondering what kind of a day I had, today a 5-year-old showed up to bird camp in a red shirt and red shorts. I said, good morning. And he said, I'm a cardinal. So today was the sweetest kind of awesome. And the thing was, we opened every day of camp with a bird of the day. And we talked about that bird and we heard his song and we learned how to identify it. We put the pictures up, so we had him all week. And the next day he did that a couple days in a row. The next day he came as a bluebird. So it was his way of really connecting with what we were talking about. And it's just a sweet experience. So I have the best job ever. Okay. I'm not a mental health professional. You need to know that about me because we're about to talk about mental health. I have, however, read and presented a lot of times on this report. The report is Mental Health in Our Changing Climate, Children and Youth. It was published by Eco America, Climate for Health, and the American Psychological Association. I'm going to share some of the relevant information with you. A person's mental health is complex and is influenced by their physical safety, their well-being, and their community. I want to be very clear. Worrying about the biodiversity crisis and climate change is rational and reasonable. However, eco-anxiety and climate anxiety is where the worry impacts your physical health and well-being. Consider loss of sleep, feelings of despair, separation from activities or people that you used to enjoy. I absolutely go through periods where I feel that way. And I have to take a step back, and I know when it's happening, and I know when I feel icky, and I just have to stop. And so that program I told you about, my North Carolina Climate Ambassador, if I don't want to do it, I don't have to. I don't have to volunteer to do anything. I don't watch documentaries. I can't read climate books. I just have to take a step back, and I go for hikes, and I enjoy my life, and I work on other things, and then I come back when I'm ready. I recommend, if that's an issue, that you try to find ways that works for you also. I also want to point out that as we consider climate change, its impacts, its implications, and solutions, it's important to keep in mind that it will and does affect some people differently than yourself. And so we can't assume how other people are feeling about it. And I'll point out very specific examples of that. So climate is probably low on the list of stressors for a child or mental health impacts. They have a lot going on, including everything on this list, existing stressors, inequalities, the developing brain, and of course their age. And we'll go through those. Existing stressors. One thing I learned as a parent and as a teacher is I cannot look back on my childhood and make any direct correlations to what my children are going through. It's just such a different world. And I do wonder if my dad feels the same way, right? He thinks, no, where I grew up and when I grew up, it was just so different. I can't make direct correlations. But I can't. And technology blew everything up and everything's different. And there's a lot different. So I try not to look back. I try to take things as they are and accept the fact that our children are growing up in a violent world. There is absolute racism and discrimination hidden and in plain sight. Social media has changed a lot for children and for their parents. And our addiction to our screens is not helping whether you're on social media or not. Adequate nutrition is not available to everyone. Neither is housing. And that's a problem. Is it a bigger problem now than I was a kid? I don't know. I'm sure it was a problem back in the 80s, but everything just seems compounded these days. Whether that's true or not, I'm not sure, but. And then there's inequalities. Climate change will not impact all children the same way. They won't impact all adults the same way or all communities either. But let's take a closer look at some of these groups. The first two bullets, economically disadvantaged and communities of color, are two groups of people who are more likely to live in areas closer to pollution sources like hog farms, highways, landfills, and power plants. And they may have less means to address those issues. A simple example is my husband and I decided this summer to go ahead and buy a portable air filter for the house and HEPA filters that we can install. Foreseeing a day when maybe air quality would diminish, maybe a wildfire is blowing. We had those wildfire smokes from Canada a few years back, that it would be nice to just have it, install it, we can run it and have safe air in our house. That is not a purchase every family can make. It wasn't inexpensive. We are privileged enough that we can go and make that purchase on the off chance, or maybe not the off chance, but when, if it happens one day. That is not something every family can afford. And some people live in areas where their air quality is much worse than what I experience, and they need it more than I do, and they don't have those resources. Another thing is to consider is they may not even have the power to deal with the fact that they live down the street from the power plant, and the power plant is just spewing out pollution that they are dealing with. Maybe they don't know how to call a town council member, or how to show up at a town council meeting, or who to email, or they didn't go to college with somebody who ended up being a lawyer and who can give them advice. So it's just, we like to think we're all in it together, but I'm not sure that that's perfectly true. Indigenous peoples culturally have stronger ties to the land than other people. And so when they notice changes to that land and the biodiversity crisis affecting the land that they love, they may take it differently than other people who aren't as connected. Maybe even the people in this room are listening online. We feel like we have deep connections to the land we love because we love being outdoors. So maybe it affects us differently than our neighbors or our family members. And so it's just going to be a different experience. The last two there, children with disabilities and pre-existing conditions. Of course, this could apply to adults with the same conditions, but I want to give you some what ifs. What if a family had to evacuate an area because a wildfire was coming down the ridge, and they have a child or even an adult who is dependent on supportive devices like crutches or a wheelchair, and you're trying to stuff everything you can into a car as fast as possible, including those supportive devices, which you may or may not have room for in the trunk. My family lived through wildfires in Northern California. I distinctly remember my sister and niece on the phone. It was the middle of the night here. My sister was frantically trying to get everything into the car, and my job was to keep my niece cool while my sister was frantically running around. I mean, they had chickens, they had goats, they had, luckily the other kids were somewhere else. And so my job in the middle of the night was just to talk to my sweet niece and make sure she was okay while her mom loaded the car. Those are emergency situations made worse if a child has a disability. Consider a family with an autistic child who is mentally rigid in their schedule, having to evacuate that child and remove them from the supports, the structure, and the routines they really rely on, and their caregivers really rely on, is an unimaginable stress. I don't know if you know anybody in that situation, but that is incredibly challenging. And so again, inequalities play a role in the climate crisis. I want to tell you about the graduating class of 2024 We Care. This is one of my schools. These are my kiddos here. They're all in kindergarten now. We Care is a nonprofit school running out of Raleigh, and they serve families who are financially strapped and cannot afford daycare. These children get to go to school for free 4 days a week from the age of 2 all the way up into kindergarten. It's an amazing program. I can't speak highly enough. And I get to see these guys every month. Well, last fall, I brought in a lesson about the forest floor. And I had a big long bucket, and it was full of soil, and it was full of logs and leaf litter and fungus and lichen and all the things. I go out in the woods and I collect things from the forest floor and I bring it to them. And it also had the millipedes and the earthworms and the beetles. And I bring it in and we get to explore, and the kids get to see it and they get to touch the animals, and they can't even believe animals live under logs. And my buddy, Rodney, ended up, after I left, he told Miss Lori, the director, you know, Miss Lori, I've never even been to the forest. And for me, I'm thinking, Raleigh, you haven't been to the forest. Like, just go to the forest, right? But these are kids that don't go to the forest. And so Lori called me and said, we got to take these kids to the forest. And so we made a plan to meet. This is at Yates Mill. We met up at Yates Mill, all 10 of the kids. It was November or something, so we were freezing. And I decided that day I would share with the kids lessons on Leave No Trace, age appropriate version of that. But I also wanted the kids to feel comfortable in this new space they had never been to. So I told them, and I'm big on trail etiquette. I don't know if you've been to a lot of national parks, and there's a lot of people there who have no idea about trail etiquette. Like, just turn off your radio. We don't want to listen to it, and step aside. I'm going up this hill faster than you are. So I wanted to teach them some etiquette. And so I said, people will walk past us, hikers will walk past us. When they do, we're going to step aside. And if you feel comfortable, if that person makes you feel comfortable enough that you want to say good morning or hello, then let's do that. Teaching them autonomy. You don't have to talk to strangers if you don't want to, right? But if you're feeling it, then let's greet everybody. So I don't know how many times we were passed all morning long, right? So then we go to the mill and we're visiting, and it's time for lunch, so we're going to walk up. So this time I'm walking with my buddy Alan, and it was just Alan and I, and everybody was behind us. And this family was approaching us, family of 5, and the kids were older. And they stepped aside. And so Alan and I were walking. I didn't think anything of it. Alan and I were walking. He looks at me, and this big smile on his face, he says, I guess we're the hikers now, huh, Miss Rachel? And oh, my heart just burst. I mean, that's just so full of love. I have this picture on my desk because I just love that day so much. He saw himself in that space, and he identified with this new person he could be, and that he belonged here, and other people saw him as a hiker, and just the look on his face, like, it just blew me away, because I just thought I was being nice and meeting these kids in the woods. I didn't think it was going to make it, so he now felt comfortable going. Anyway, we went back for the spring to see how the woods changed in the seasons. So we got to have 2 field trips in the woods together. And I hope we do it every year from now on. Okay, so when I look at this children to early teens, I think, wow, there's a lot of developmental changes that go on. The report actually starts prenatal, goes through pregnant women and how they cope with climate change and how that affects the fetus and infants. And we're skipping all that for the sake of time. So I'm lumping this big group. But of course, childhood is a time of rapid physiological and mental and emotional development. And what happens during these years can have enduring impacts on their well-being. For example, in 2008, Hurricane Ike hit North America. 15 months after the storm, 49% of children who survived the storm had trouble falling asleep, and 39% had trouble staying asleep. That was over a year after it hit. Lasting effects. Global studies connect disasters that cause economic loss and home displacement with increased violence toward children. Stressed out parents. In 2021, there was a study done in Australia. Do you remember those bushfires and all those horrible pictures of koalas burned up? They did a study of parents after that tragedy, and parents reported a change in parenting style from less fun to more serious. The fact of the matter is, parents and caregivers who struggle to regain their own emotional stability after extreme events may be less able to support their children who went through the same tragedy. We also need to consider heat because the world is warming up. We know that. In 2023, there was a study done in New York City. Children ages 6 to 11 made more mental health related emergency department visits during summer heat waves than cooler days, which kind of blows my mind. Non-Hispanic Black children, as well as Medicaid patients, were overrepresented in these emergencies. Did they have air conditioning at home? I don't know. I don't know why. I don't know that they know why, but that was the information they found. It's not going to affect everybody the same way. Yes, some people need permission to play outside. This is a photo of my son. He is 18 now, so this is 15 years ago. And I can't remember why he came home like this or how it happened, but he came home covered in mud. And in my house, that just meant we turned on the hose, right? I don't remember it being a big deal. It's possible I put that mud on him. I don't even remember. But he's perfectly satisfied to be covered in mud. Some children cannot handle it. A first grader, we were doing a lesson about habitats. And again, I brought in buckets. They could pull stuff out and look at it. And he wasn't participating. I'm walking around the room and I said, "Hey, what's going on? You don't want to touch anything? I'm not allowed to get my hands dirty." I said, "Okay. Um, if you change your mind, I promise we'll leave time for washing our hands when we're done." And I walked away and he started to touch some things, but he needed permission. Another example, my beautiful after school program where I get to play with kids outside. Um, I think it was 5, 7, and 8-year-old girls, which is just so much fun for me because I have mud people at home. 2 boys is what I have at home. A lot of boy energy. So it was really fun to have these girls to play with. I knew it was going to rain that day, but we go out rain or shine because it's nature. We're going outside. It's cold, it's hot, it's rainy. We're going outside. It wasn't going to storm. It wasn't like a thunderstorm was coming, but it was going to rain. So we're walking around and I'm really cold. So if I'm shaking, that's why. If you're picking up on some trembling, I'm just cold. It did start to rain. And so we took shelter under this tree. And the girls were freaking out. Like this was a really big deal. They were frightened. And school was like we could just run back to the school. It wasn't a big deal. We weren't far away. They were really freaking out, but I didn't want to give up on this fun. I love being in the rain. So I told them, I said, "What if we just stood here and closed our eyes and just listened to the rainfall?" And so they did, and they calmed down a little. And I said, "What if we just watched the rain fall on the pond right there?" And so we did, and they got to see it. So we're standing there and they've gotten calmer and the rain's picking up. And one little girl said, "Can we play in the rain?" And I was like, "I don't know why you haven't yet." "Yeah, go for it." They were squealing and running around and doing cartwheels and twirling, and they just had the most fun. But it didn't occur to them that they should run around in the rain. So that's the kind of fun stuff I get to do, run around in the rain with 8-year-olds. Okay, continuing on. Heat impacts learning as well as health. We heard about those kids who had to go to the emergency room. Well, another study done in US schools on the hottest days of the year, 3rd to 8th graders were evaluated for their cognitive function. On the hottest days of the year, there was more significant negative impacts on learning. This was especially true in math class. And the negative impacts are more pronounced in disadvantaged students. Heat impairs cognitive function. So we can think of kids trying to do math, or we can think of teenagers trying to drive on the hottest days with impaired cognitive function. Heat also increases suicide rates in all age groups, not just children, limits physical activity, and physical activity we know impacts health and well-being. Now, there are fewer studies done on children and preteens about their responses to climate change, but I have one to share with you. A study done in Colorado found that 82% of 5th graders reported sadness, fear, and anger after learning about environmental degradation in school that day. More research is needed, but from what little has been done, it is evidence, these are the researchers' words, not mine, that children feel a deep sense of concern about the planet and their future. And my question is learning meant to be stressful or debilitating to health and well-being? When is the right time to introduce these challenging topics? You'd think 5th grade was an okay time, right? They should be able to handle it. It's just science class. Sadness, fear, and anger. And then they get older and they hear more stuff. And we have to remember that teenagers are still developing cognitively and emotionally. They're still learning how to regulate themselves and their behaviors. We cannot, while they want to be treated like adults, fully formed, they are not. So, like younger children, they are still susceptible to the mental health effects of extreme weather and higher temperatures. Consider on the hottest days, a teenager being less able to complete their work. This affects their behaviors. It can all have impacts on their social lives and can be associated with psychological distress. Teenagers are also going to pick up on changes in a household in different ways than younger kids. Any disruption in school, additional stress associated with climate disasters, food insecurity, and financial stress can affect their current relationships, future relationships, and how they see themselves in the future. The fact of the matter is, teens lack full rights. They can't vote for things like people who want to enact policies to prevent climate damage when these kids are older. They don't have status. When they walk into the room, do they have the same power as an adult might? And they don't have the financial resources to buy an electric vehicle or change the water pump at their house or, do what needs to be done to upgrade things and leave less of an impact. This can leave them feeling powerless and can increase their anxiety. When questioned, adolescents and young adults experience the highest levels of climate anxiety compared with adults 30 years or older. A study in 2021 found that strikingly high percentages of young people felt betrayed by the poor government response to climate change. I believe this study was done in the United States. And 40% said they felt dismissed or ignored when they tried to talk to other people about climate change. Part of the research I've learned as a climate ambassador is more people are interested in climate change than you would think, that we think it's along political lines and we shouldn't bring it up. But actually, there's a lot of concern about climate across political lines. That's something I know. That's not something teens are feeling. Moral injury is defined as an interpretation of adult behavior as a lack of care to protect the future. They feel like they're caught up in a system that is violating their own sense of right and wrong. And the only solution to that is institutional courage, where institutions seek the truth and engage in moral action despite the costs associated with doing so. These teens want to see adults taking action, and they're not seeing it. I have a quote here from a young lady. I don't know how old she is now, but she was one of the original organizers of the Sunrise Movement. Sunrise Movement is a youth climate advocacy group. Her name is Ada Crandall. She says, as a teenage climate organizer, I'm sick of being told I'm inspiring. I read this all the time and I still want to cry when I read it. Placing the weight of the climate crisis on young people like me is not only unjust, it is a guarantee of failure. I don't just want people to be inspired, I want them to join me. They're looking for adults to step up. And they feel like they have to step up because the adults are not. Teens and their shoes. So I used to teach high school, and I used to love to bring high school kids outside. A very different experience than bringing little kids outside. They like their shoes a lot, and they don't want to get their shoes dirty. And so I think I'll tell them in advance, and they can bring a different pair, and they never do. So it comes to the day, and they're like, I'm not going outside in these shoes. I was like, sorry, dude, you're going outside in those shoes. So we go outside, and there's grumbling. They don't want to do it. And we go anyway. And just with every step away from the school building, you see them kind of relax a little, and the conversation changes, and they're just not as uptight, and they're having a good time. They like to get out, they sit all day long. So it's a really nice change. And inevitably, we end up going somewhere where someone's shoes get dirty. But one day, this young lady, she was kind of a hard nut to crack. I don't even know that I knew her very well, but I was just so proud. She was one of those girls who just wanted to wear her shoes. And we're going for a walk, and she started pointing out all the plants we had identified weeks before. And I was just like, look at her identifying mistletoe. She was just relaxing into it. But the fact of the matter is, teens have a lot of barriers to entry when it comes to nature. Nature, we know, can really bolster our moods and relax us and regulate our emotions and give us the energy to come back to it and get back to our lives on screens and the busy world that we live in. But if a teen hasn't already been introduced to being outside, the likelihood of them going on their own is reduced. Things like having proper clothing. I taught with a teacher who she opened up a new high school here. And when you open up a new high school in Wake County, you get a ton of money to buy just whatever you need. And so she bought like plastic pants that you can put over your clothes. Like imagine getting in the water like a fisherman without the boots. And the kids would wear them and then they would sit in the grass. They wouldn't sit in the grass before. So they'd actually like sit down and like do the biodiversity studies because they didn't feel like they were going to get their clothes dirty. There's also peer pressure and this need to identify ourselves with what we're doing. Am I a basketball player? Am I a hiker? Can I be both? Is it possible? Am I a hiker? Does that make me granola? I don't even know. Do they use that word anymore? I don't know. People used to call, when I moved to North Carolina, everybody called me granola. The California girl was so granola. So I don't know what they would call it these days, but do we have to be all in? Can I do both? Like, can I enjoy the basketball court and Bass Lake? Can I just come and fish and it be okay? And I don't have to put it on Instagram and be over identified with this. But there's a lot of barriers to entry and they need it. Especially imagine a kid who's sitting in science class and they're learning about climate change and they're feeling the devastation of it and they want to work. And so they start to get involved and they start to get worried about it and they don't go enjoy what they're doing. They're not going out to enjoy the environment they're trying to save. So it just feels like I'm in this space of hopelessness without any of the rewards. So it sounds like a problem. What are we going to do about it? There's lots of levels of support that we could offer. But the truth is, adults need to step up. On a systems level, the fact of the matter is, basic needs need to be met. A child's well-being is built upon a foundation of stability, and the climate crisis threatens stability. Basic needs include stable housing, healthy, nutritious food. Not all food is equal. Clean water, not just water, it should be clean, and safety inside and outside the house, including schools. I would argue that kids need time outside. They need unstructured time. They need to be able to explore on their own without somebody being afraid that someone is going to be sued if something happens, but that's the world we live in. So what I do is I provide structured activities and I try to make it as unstructured as possible. As an example, last winter we went out to identify trees and we rubbed the bark with the paper and the crayons and we had little magnifying lenses to see the moss and the lichen and the ants, and we looked at the color and the furrows and we identified the tree, and the kids decided they wanted to see which tree had the best back scratching ability. And that was kind of their unstructured input to our scientific investigation. And it just made it so much more tangible to them. And I could have shut that down. Why would you do that? But because they got silly with it, but it just made it more of a connection. And so they got to kind of that creative, unstructured time within the structured environment where they were still safe. There has to be support at the community level, like North Carolina Wildlife Federation and South Wake Conservationists. How are we going to support these kids? There has to be opportunities for people to get involved. When opportunities for action allows young people to express their emotions and enhance their physical or their social connections, climate anxiety can reduce. It has to be social, and they have to be able to feel safe to share how they're feeling about it. In 2022, a study was done that suggested that young adults with climate anxiety who got involved in activism protected themselves from falling into a depressive state. Helping others was especially helpful for kids. So if they could actually do something for like a school that was destroyed because of a tornado or fires or flooding damage. That was more meaningful and helped with their own angst and anxiety. We need to focus most on action and age appropriate solutions. Everything should be positive. You absolutely can teach children how to compost without once mentioning methane. You don't have to do it. That's why we don't want to throw it in the garbage can. They don't have to know that it's methane in the landfill until they need to know. And they'll ask you when they need to know, why do we compost? But the fact that your 6-year-old is already separating out their garbage is a total win because barriers to entry. Composting sounds complicated until you do it and you figure it out, and then it's not so complicated. If you start your children out that way, whether it's in a classroom or at home, it's not complicated. You've reduced that barrier to entry, and then they will learn more as they go. And I don't want anybody making an assumption about an age. There are those savvy 7-year-olds who are raising money for endangered monarch butterflies, and they're all in, and every class project is all about the monarchs, and they're writing their congressperson, and that 7-year-old is something special, and not all 7-year-olds need to go there. So let's make room for the outliers, and let's make sure that everybody else is having their needs met as well. Schools and early education centers can definitely support children on a lot of levels, but I wanted today to speak about the physical environment. Structuring the physical environment to include natural play spaces is one of the easiest ways to encourage children to get outside and to enjoy the outdoors and to learn that it's okay if your hands get dirty and that sticks break and that rocks are heavy and water makes mud. All those things are important, and some of those things kids don't understand. Children should get as much outside time as possible embedded into their school day and after school. It doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be recess. It can also be in a school garden, composting, rain collection, or very simply going on a walk. One time I took kids for a walk. We were doing an after-school program. This school is especially great. They have an especially great outdoor setup. They are very nature-minded. It is very purposeful. They plant native plants. The whole campus is beautiful. It's a wonderful place for me to work. And I do after-school programs there regularly. I don't know what the lesson was supposed to be because I plan them in advance, but we were going through a period of just a lot of rain. And so I just asked the kids, should we go see what's happening at the creek? It just feels like there's been a lot of rain. They're like, yeah, let's do it. Let's go to the creek. So we walk down the school and there's a retention pond, and the retention pond is an overflow area, and you can see the overflow area. And then the overflow area was overflowing, and you saw this sheet of water going down the hill into the woods. Well, this particular school has a partnership with the community park. They have stairs built down into the woods, and then there's a trail, and then you cross a footbridge, and then you go over the main creek, and it's all very structured. And so it's very easy to take kids down there. Now, I'm an independent contractor. I'm not an employee of the school. This school not only had that infrastructure set up so classes can go down into the woods, but they also had policies for what you have to bring, what channel your walkie-talkie has to be on, what's going to happen if a kid gets injured, what are the policies. I'm carrying a first aid kit. Also, as an independent contractor, I'm not allowed to bring the kids off campus. It's not safe, so that I have to have an employee escort. So all those things are in place. So when we have this amazing rainfall and we want to see what's happening at the creek, we can just go. So on this particular day, we went across the first crossing, but we decided to stay on the hillside of the creek to go see how the water was coming down the hill, because we didn't know. And this water was coming over the hill. You think it was Niagara Falls, the way the kids were reacting. I have, it's the cutest little video. I don't videotape the kids, but it was their reaction. Oh man, it's epic. And it's just this water coming over the hill, and then it goes under the ground, and then it comes back out. And they just thought it was the most epic experience to see water coming down. And that's what we did that day. We went for a walk. We looked for water, and it was epic. Family support. Of course, the family is the most meaningful piece of all of this, but not all families are prepared for what happens when my kid comes home talking about climate change. There's so much that parents have to be ready for. It's hard to know about everything. But children and adolescents are hearing about climate change from school, news, social media, and friends. Younger children absolutely need guidance. They need to have age appropriate conversations. They need to be led by example. Again, like start composting or let's walk down to the park instead of drive. Adults need to buffer the messaging because what they hear might be more devastating than what they're ready for. So it needs to be explained to them. It should always be truthful and age appropriate. Consider a teen or an adolescent who comes home and mom is mixing up or dad's mixing up the bolognese sauce full of meat, right? And the teen comes home and he had a lesson on environmental education today and he says, I'm a vegan, right? And dad's like, for real? Can you be a vegan after dinner? Like, I just made all this food. So, how do we handle those situations? Because you're not wrong. Vegans have a lower carbon footprint. Does it have to happen in this moment? Can we have this conversation after dinner? Can you, the damage has been done with this particular piece of meat. So can we move forward together? Can you tell me what that means to you? Would you mind helping the family with meal preparation? Because I don't know how to cook vegetarian meals. Acknowledging what they're coming to you with, setting your own boundaries for what you can handle, having a conversation, all of that is important. It has to be truthful. We have to listen without promises. We cannot promise everything will be okay because, quite frankly, we have no idea. The fact of the matter is, there is a monster under the bed. And pretending it isn't there doesn't ease anyone's concerns. We have to stay realistic, but positive. I had a picture of my kids. My son is so happy that for whatever reason it didn't come over when we transferred this to a PowerPoint. But we have to know that our seeds that we're planting are working. An example of this is I'm an avid birder, and my boys tolerate that at best. They used to go out and look at birds with me when they were little. One time we were driving in the car, and I wanted to play my bird CD. Oh gosh, can't we listen to music? Whatever. It's like worse than NPR, right? So I said, no, I want to listen to my birds. We're going to listen to my birds for a couple minutes. And so they're like, whatever. And then the red-shouldered hawk called, and the two of them were like, Mom, that's the hawk, like behind our house. Is that the red-shouldered hawk, or do you think that's the red-tailed hawk? And now they're having a conversation about birds, and I knew they liked birds, and I knew they were pretending not to like birds. Anyway, engaging children in conservation has to recognize and honor childhood and the needs of the child first. Then it has to be truthful, hopeful, and positive. Young people need evidence of action by the adults in their lives and the community. We have to honor their needs first. We can't count on them to save us. It is amazing when an 8-year-old decides they're going to save the earth, and we want to believe them, and we want to have the Greta Thunbergs of the world step up, and we also have to honor that they need a childhood. And if they don't have that childhood and the space to play and the emotional regulation of being in nature and their healthy, stable childhoods, then they're just going to be climate advocates with a lot of anxiety issues. And that is not sustainable. Okay, so this is me. You can follow Facebook, Instagram, that's where I'm at. I do write a couple of blogs. Wildlife Encounters of a Homebody is all about just the critters I see in and around, and Borrowed Classroom is about nature education. If you want to read the full report, the mental health report, follow that QR code. I didn't make it up, it's real. And if you're interested in becoming a climate ambassador, you can do the 4-hour free online training anytime you want. You can follow us at Path to Positive at Eco America on Twitter and Facebook, or sign up for our newsletter at pathtopositive.org. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll take questions now. I'm not seeing any questions online, so we'll go ahead and pass around the mic in the room.
Not a question, but an observation. I'm a retired teacher that escaped Florida and moved here a year ago to live with my daughter. Florida is a wasteland for education. Florida's ruined. There are 2 new laws in the state of Florida. This is what teachers deal with. They are not allowed to order any books. It says Gulf of Mexico. And you are not allowed to order any textbooks that cover climate change because it is phony and fake. And that is what that's the state that Florida's in. It is ruined.
Powerful.
Thank you for sharing. When I was teaching high school environmental science, I was like a covert environmentalist, which seems weird because I was the AP environmental science teacher, but I felt uncomfortable being an environmentalist out loud because I didn't want anyone complaining about their grades because I was an environmentalist, and their bad grades had nothing to do with the fact that they could not explain what I was asking them to explain. It probably was because I'm an environmentalist, and so therefore I hate them. It was just that kind of environment. So I got to live my best environmentalist life once I quit. I was okay working in that system, but I definitely felt uncomfortable if I stated anything that could be politically charged. Unfortunate that that's the reality.
Along those same lines, we got a question online about how do you deal or have a conversation with people that deny climate change or deny that this is a problem?
Sure. I'm related to some of those people. I meet them where they're at. I try to pick and choose my battles. If I know they're in a position where they're not going to listen, what's the point? For a while, I was doing some advocacy work here in the town of Holly Springs, and we would go out and ask people about idling vehicles and how they felt about things. And it was a little nerve-wracking because you never knew what you're going to come up against. And yeah, we'd meet some people who were really aggressively against us, saying like, maybe you should, stop idling your car and save some money and save some gas. And this man was just he really wanted us to know that he's going to buy whatever car he wants. He's going to run it as much as he wants, and he's going to waste as much gas as he wants. And that's the way it goes. And so we're just, oh, okay, well, thanks for talking. So you have to pick your battles. And it does help. I feel much more confident because of the climate ambassador training. They train us to deal with those issues. And you just have to decide, is this the hill I'm going to die on today? Is this the battle I'm going to have? Because I'm actually surprised how many people respond to me. I don't feel like I come off as like an overt environmentalist in the real world. But how many people come up to me to talk to me about it is kind of surprising. In stores, they'll just ask me because they see me with my bags. Or a reusable container. So I'm actually surprised how often people are responding to my actions and not what I'm saying. So I think it gets through that way.
What can we do on the personal level to ensure that help fight against AI and how it pollutes the environment?
So AI is polluting the environment because of the massive amount of energy it takes to generate the computers. And the thing you can do right now is opt out of accepting all of the opportunities for AI to work. I don't know if you open up your email and it says, ChatGPT can write this for you, and I ignore that. Or even The AI summary at the top of the Google searches, you just have to opt out of those as much as you can. There's certainly AI in my life I love. For instance, Merlin and all my bird calls, that is AI in action. I'm going to use that form of AI. I've been using it for years, but anytime you can opt out of it is the best that you can do. This is, gosh, an onslaught. It's coming our way, isn't it? Right now, there's a group of people in Apex who are trying to fight a center from coming into their area. So if the centers are going to come into your area, you need to come to town council meetings. You need to argue against why it should be built there. But I don't personally love that AI is being forced into my life. I feel like it should be something I'm willing to opt into or pay for, but it does seem like it's coming whether we like it or not. If someone wants to take the mic and offer a better suggestion, that's what I know of right now. But if someone would like to add, oh, and here they come. Here's the hands.
Me first. So Rachel comes into our classroom once a month. She's had a great impact, I think, for me personally and for our class. One of the things we've done in our classroom is we have opted out on every single one of our devices. So we now have it canceled because we notice our students were going to that first thing. It makes it so easy. They just want to read that first. So we have disabled it.
How do we disable it? Is there do you have to go to settings or? Ah,
If you use Google, you can use this like filter that's just like a dash, like a hyphen, and then AI, and then it will automatically take the AI overview out of your search. And you can also like, if you have a powerful enough device, you can download a local AI model onto your device and run it, and it helps protect the environment and your privacy. So sorry. Yeah. Yeah, unless you go down to the people also ask section, but you can run AI locally on your device, so it will like not waste as much environmental resources because it runs it on your device and not in the cloud. And it also is better for privacy. So
Yeah, so the tip was to type in a Google search and specifically say minus AI. So Google minus AI. All right, so we had a question online about you as an educator. How has teaching vocab limited preschoolers challenged you personally as an educator?
They aren't vocab limited after I have a chance to meet with them. Just kidding. Okay, this is a great question because I went from teaching like the highest level high school students who are like bound. I mean, I have former students who are like surgeons and stuff, and they took my classes. And then now I'm with 2-year-olds. I was lucky enough that I was paying attention when my kids were little and we were watching PBS. And I saw how programs like PBS was using language. I was picking up on it without realizing I was doing that. I also, especially when I first started off, I would go to the library and I would pick all the nonfiction books on the topic I was hoping to teach, and I would read them, and I would see the language they were using and how they were using it. So when I design a lesson, I pick out the vocabulary words I want to review. The kids repeat them. The idea there is if they hear the word, if they can say the word, one day when they read the word, it will be more familiar when they go to sound it out. It's an emerging literacy skill. So I do have them repeat words, and they're repeating words. Today I was with a 2-year-old classroom. It was seasons. It was climate. I taught a climate class to 2-year-olds today. They learned that we have 4 seasons. That was our climate class. That was it. Nothing about climate disasters. I went to 4-year-olds. We learned about seasons. Then we learned how box turtles, who are native to North Carolina, change behaviors with the seasons. And the box turtle I have, he can't overwinter this year because he was hit by a car and he had to go to the hospital. So my job is to keep him warm all winter so his body can heal. And so they're learning about climate and how native organisms are adapted to the climate that we personally have. And so we're using vocabulary like herbivores and climate, and brumation was the word we used today. And will they remember it tomorrow? I don't know. They do. I come back and they'll remember some things and they'll forget some things, but they're repeating them, and how much they're using them at home or whatnot, I'm not sure, but I definitely include vocabulary on purpose.
Thank you. We have a question from someone that is speaking about the lights out pollution issue. So what are some main points you would hit on if you have 3 minutes or less at a public event where you're talking about reducing light pollution?
We've done activities like this with kids also. So I have 3 to 5 minutes, turn the lights out. What would I say? Well, you have to mention what light pollution is. It's nice to have visual effects to download images and print them off of like Google Earth images of the United States at night, and you can see where you can see where every city is. That's a really good visual explanation of light pollution. And we have to explain that there's a difference between safety and decor. And safety can be met with lights that aren't as bright, and maybe even have examples of light bulbs. Red and orange works better. It still provides us with safety without causing all of the pollution. Also, where we angle the lights and the direction of angle. So I would give practical tips. You might even give practical tips about where you can buy these things, these lights. And I would have a visual display of light pollution. And I think what people just don't understand is how often we interfere with nature accidentally. Like, we don't think it's a big deal that our lights are on outside, but it is. It's a huge, huge problem. I read this amazing book, and they were talking about how many people are afraid of moths, because the only interaction we have with moths is when they're completely freaking out because they're next to a light. And if it was the dark, they'd be flying like a butterfly, and they would be like magnificently beautiful. And we think they're like these weird creatures because they're in the light and they're freaking out. So I think just trying to really hit on practical steps and why is the best thing, because it's very easy to say, go buy a red light bulb, and very hard to explain science technically in 5 minutes.
We got time for one more question.
Just a comment, if anybody wants to see and learn a lot about climate change differently than living here, I went to Alaska. Oh my God. On the cruise ship was a scientist that prepared us for everything. Learned that something like 83% of the people in Alaska need to have access to a boat or a seaplane to get off their property. I mean, these people live, it affects them 24/7 in how the polar bears with the sea ice melting in the Arctic, that's usually where they would go to find food. And of course, the sea ice is melting, so the polar bears are turning around and heading inland, and that's grizzly territory. And so if you do a search online, there's now hybrid grizzly polar bears. Look it up. They aren't pretty.
There was a question. There you go.
Yeah, we don't know what the changes are going to be, right? We're going to have new species. We're going to lose some species. So we're all in this state of flux and instability. And we have to find ways to be emotionally regulated with that so we can help the other people in our lives who may need it at times. So going on those adventures and seeing those wonderful creatures and the changes that are coming and how it affects different people differently is important to expand our worldview and our understanding of the problem. And yeah, it's a wild ride we're on, isn't it?
All right. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you for raising awareness on this important topic, especially as it affects kids, and also the call to action. Thank you for that. For those of you online, this concludes our webinar. Thanks for joining us this evening. For those of you here, please stick around. We do have a number of things here. We'd like you to participate if you can. We do have a raffle. Those of you that haven't had a chance to get a raffle ticket, there's some pretty nice prizes back there, which Jeremy is running the raffle. So we'll be picking a lucky number here shortly. And Naoma is in the back there. We have the t-shirts, look kind of like this. And if you're interested in one of those, we're happy to get you one of those. And also, if you have, if you're new and you haven't put your phone on that QR code over there, please do it. We'd love to know what you're interested in because we'd like to get in touch with you and help you get connected. And we really appreciate you coming tonight. And we do have some refreshments here, so help yourself, stick around, have some conversation. Thanks for coming tonight.